I'm excited to share another semi-indoor gardening tip, trick, method, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to teach you how you can take one plant that you buy at the store, although you'll find out in a minute that's actually not one plant, it's multiple plants. But even if it was one plant, I'm going to show you a trick of how you can take this plant that you buy at a nursery, even at your grocery store, Walmart, wherever you might find like herbs like basil and parsley, and how you can actually turn them into multiple ongoing plants for years to come. If you learn this method, you may never have to buy another basil plant or herb plant again. We'll say basil and parsley for now because we're going to focus on these two. But it's a cool trick, and I have to tell you how it came to my mind to do this. So I have learned how you can propagate herbs and where you can cut them so that you can actually cause them to send out roots to make another plant. But something that I've always done as long as I have been seeding plants or starting plants from seeds is learning how to separate the roots of multiple plants. So if you start a plant and you've got, maybe you dropped 3 seeds in there and you've got 3 tomato plants growing in a little cell, I have always, instead of trimming them or thinning them, I have learned how to separate the roots in the dirt and then have 3 separate plants. Well, I was staring at this basil plant the other day at the grocery store and I thought, heavens, there's like 15 plants in this one little pod. And over here in this parsley plant, I mean, if you can see how many stems you're seeing there, I'm going to show you in a minute, but this could very easily be 20 plants in this one little cell. Now, here's the thing. I'm not sure why these companies do this. I think it's maybe because they don't think we know any better, and maybe the general population doesn't know any better. But as a gardener, I know that having what I said looks like 15 plants in this little cell, this is not going to be a healthy basil plant. If you're looking at it from the top down, it looks like a healthy basil plant. But this is actually multiple plants all trying to compete for the nutrients that are in this one cell, and it's not going to make it for a very long time. So if you've ever grown these, like you've bought them at the grocery store and tried to have herbs fresh indoors inside your house and they haven't made it, it could very well be because of how these companies plant these herbs. They just cast seeds in there. They don't meticulously put 1 or 2 seeds per cell. And then you have all these plants competing for nutrients. So I want to show you how you can separate them to get multiple plants that you can put out in your garden, have in your house, give away to friends, or whatever your MO may be. This is such a fun thing that you can do to save money and save your plants. Anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so we're gonna take this basil plant here and we're gonna take it out of the cell. Now I will tell you, I watered this really well before doing this because I wanna make sure that it handles this transplant well. They usually do that better when they've had a good drink of water. Now I have this bowl here and it's got the water in it, and I didn't decide this till just now. When I start breaking apart these seedlings, I'm gonna set them in this bowl of water and I'm gonna add a little bit more water to it so that they can continue to get water as I'm doing this. So basically what you're gonna do is you're just gonna gently start kind of pulling on this dirt and separating the roots. Now, are you gonna lose some roots in the process? Yes, I'm actually gonna do this over this pot so I don't get a bunch of dirt in my water. So I'm just gently kind of finding where these plant stems are. So each one of these stems is a basil plant, because when you grow basil, it grows off of one stem, one vertical stem, one main stem, and then you'll have the little leaf nodes coming off the main stem. Similar and different to like a tomato plant. So I'm just gonna kind of get in here very gently and I'm gonna start trying to pull apart these individual plants. I may actually just try to separate it down the middle here. The good thing about herbs are they're very forgiving and they'll handle this pretty well. This one is actually pretty root bound, which is not surprising. There we go. I don't know if you can tell. I'm just gently pulling. Okay, so here I've got one little plant and one big plant. So I'm just going to gently pull on the bigger one more than I'm pulling on the smaller one. There we go. See that? I'm gonna set it down here in my bowl of water. Okay, now here again, I have a big plant and a small plant. I'm gonna try to separate these here. Wherever it'll separate. I'm gonna gently pull on these roots so I'm not totally killing it. Here's a little bitty one I'm gonna put in the water. It's not looking so good. I'm gonna put that in a smaller cup of water. Okay. There we go, there's 2 more. And they're really kind of starting to look not so healthy, right? Why do we think that is? Look, the stems are really kind of puny. So we're gonna see if we can help these to get healthier. Here's another one I'm just gonna pull out. See the roots? I'm gonna stick that in my water here. Oh, I just lost one. That's okay. There's another itty bitty baby. I'm gonna put that in my small cup of water. There's a little baby. There we go. Put that in the water. Okay. You may be thinking and wondering if this is actually going to kill the plant. Now I will say that when you do this to any kind of plant, you are causing it some stress, just like humans, when we move and experience stress, plants do as well. So we're gonna try to give them the best environment possible to make them survive the transplant and then thrive. And like I said, a part of that is watering them really well before you do this. The second part is getting them right into an environment that's gonna allow these roots to thrive. So here, I've got these roots, I'm putting them in the water so they immediately can start drinking up that water. So I've got the bigger plants in here and I've got these little bitty baby plants right in here. So in this pot, I just have some potting soil that I had left over from last year, surprisingly. I'm just gonna I've already kind of come in here and loosened it up. It's very moist already. I didn't have to moisten it, so that's good. That means it'll still have some of its vitality in here. So I'm gonna kind of just flatten it out a little bit, and then I'm gonna start poking holes in here to put these plants. So let me get a count and maybe get my dibber so we can start setting them in. Okay, so I have my dibber here, and if you're wondering what a dibber is, it looks sort of like this. They make all different kinds. This is actually just a cheap one I got from a seed starting kit a year or 2 ago, but it's worked really good. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 big plants here, and that'll be perfect for this size pot. So, and maybe eventually I'll separate these out and put them into bigger pots. But for right now, this is a great, this is about 10 inches deep. So that gives it plenty of room for the roots to grow. So I'm going to, I already forgot what I said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm gonna just start making holes, and I'm gonna make these holes big enough to where I can just set the roots down in it without disturbing them. Okay, so I made a pretty deep hole. I'm gonna bury about this much of the plant down in there. And then it'll send out lateral roots, which will help to strengthen it. And I'm just barely kind of patting the soil around this. And these are gonna look limp for maybe the first day. And then once they start getting the nutrients in there, they'll really perk up. So I'm just getting down in there into the dirt, really giving enough room to set the roots in there. Oops, did I just, shoot, I did. All right, well, I'm gonna show you. I actually just broke this one. That's okay. This will actually be a great example here in a minute of how you can continue to make basil plants without just cutting off the roots. So I'll show you that in just a second. Haha, that was an accident. Set that right there. Okay, so I have all of the basil plants in the pot, and I decided to hold off on this little guy. I'm gonna do something different with him. But what I'm noticing is how limp they are, and part of that's because of the transplant. Part of that is because they just weren't as healthy as they should have been, all being crowded into that little cell. So there's 2 different things we can do here. Number one, when I am off camera, I'm gonna put a little bit more potting soil in here to support those stems. So I'll fill it up just a little bit more, maybe about 1 inch or so. I'm gonna give it a really good soak a really good soak so that those roots can take up that water and the nutrients. It'll really help perk them up. And I'm gonna make sure and put them in a sunny window, but not in direct sunlight. Now, right now it's winter, so we don't have a ton of direct sunlight, so I'm pretty much good there. I would not wanna put them under like heavy grow lights or again, direct sunlight right now because they're kind of like tender little babies. So I'm gonna go take them to my bathroom where I have this really beautiful place where I put all my house plants and they can get some indirect sunlight that way. The other thing I can do is some of these have like a really sad looking stem that's kind of, it's like shrunk. Let me get you a little closer and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you look at this one right here, if it'll kind of focus, this stem right here is really weak and it's just kind of limp and hanging over. So there's a couple things I can do. I can let it grow, but I don't think it'll grow very well. So what I'm actually gonna do, and this was the other trick I'm gonna show you, is you can separate plants and replant them and grow new plants, or you can propagate. So right here, where you see all these leaves growing out of the stem, this is known as the leaf node. And if I trim this plant right here, where this weak spot is in the stem, it's actually gonna do two things. It's gonna tell the plant to keep growing. It's gonna send out, it's going to send out more leaves and more stems from here. And then it's also going to allow this plant right here to sprout roots if I put it in water. So I'm just going to take my clean cutters, my scissors here, and I'm going to cut right there at that point where it's weak. I didn't even take any. And then I'm going to put this right into this cup of water. By cutting right there above that leaf node, you can actually take the part that you cut off, stick it in water, and it'll sprout roots, and you have a whole nother basil plant, which is super cool. So again, separate out the roots. If you've got something like this that has way too many plants in one cell, multiple plants that you can grow, or cut away the leaf node, which will cause the lower part of the plant to want to grow more, and then cause this plant, once you put it in water, I'm gonna do this one too, to make roots and create another plant. The other thing that's nice is I can either cook with this, right? I could go right to the kitchen and cook with it. But anytime you're growing basil in your garden, if you've ever grown basil, you know that it can get really leggy and tall. How you encourage a basil plant, or really a lot of herbs, to get bushy is by cutting right there at that leaf node, especially when they're small, but even when they get bigger, it's gonna encourage growth out and not just up. Now it is going to grow taller, you know, by nature, but it's also going to encourage it to grow out. So this one's looking weak here, so I'm going to cut again right above that leaf node and see if I can sprout that one. Those are just looking kind of puny anyway. The rest of these I think are okay, so we'll see how they do. So there we go. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I ended up only putting 7 in here. Basil plants from $12.99 purchase. Pretty cool. I'm really interested to see what happens with this parsley plant because it's so thick. Okay, so as you can see here, this is really these roots are really root bound. Even though there's a ton of plants in here, you can see all those stems, it may be harder to separate these just because of this. But again, if you've ever bought these from the grocery store and have not had very good success, that's probably why. So know that it wasn't necessarily you, it was probably the people that put these together. So I'm gonna try to start separating this and let's see how it goes. Again, I'm gonna kind of start from the bottom and just kind of loosen this up. Here's another hot tip for you. Anytime you buy plants at the nursery, even before you take them home, I would take them out of the cell that they've been grown in and see what the roots are like. If they're really root bound, I would opt for another plant or another variety. If you get home and you notice this, my suggestion is to tear gently off the bottom like this and loosen up the sides with like a knife or something sharp. And it's gonna allow those roots to kind of loosen and be able to grow out and not just continue to grow within this root ball here. So again, we'll see how successful I am because this is so root bound, but I should be able to get at least more than one plant, which would totally be worth the $2.99 that I spent. Ooh, it is really bound up in here. So I'm just loosening the soil with my fingers. And here we go, I've got one right here. Now the thing about parsley is it's so frilly, for lack of a better word, that the plants kind of get caught in the other leaves. All the stems are intertwining more than like the basil. So here's one. Now when you pull these out, pull closer to the bottom instead of pulling on the stems. So these look pretty weak. So I'm gonna get them right in that water. And then I'm just gonna start pulling right at these larger base stems here and seeing if I can loosen the roots a bit. This is like combing and brushing my daughter's hair. Trying to get all the knots out without harming her. All right. You know how you'd have to use your finger to pull knots out of your hair or someone else's hair? That's exactly what I'm doing with this parsley plant. Okay, here's another one. Pretty small root. Okay, just keep going here. Okay, so looks like we got, see, there's only like 2 stems on these plants, so they're super puny, really. I do love nursing plants back to health, so I'll be curious to see what I can do with this, but I mean, there is a zillion plants in here. It's like they just dumped the whole packet of seeds into this one cell, which to me just seems like an absolute waste. But I'm not the company, so who knows what their reason for doing that is. There we go, more. Okay, so this is amazing how many plants I have on my table. I will show you just a second. But I got down to these itty bitty little parsley seedlings, and it's really hard to tell on the camera, but the parsley family is a part of the carrot family, the Apiaceae family, and they have similar growing habits and similar, characteristics within the plant. So when you're looking at this little, what we would call a taproot, it is very similar to what you would see on a carrot, albeit much, much, much smaller. So I just thought that was interesting to pull down to the base roots of these and to see the similarities between the parsley and the carrot. So I'm gonna have to, after this video, go put all of these in a better jar or something for their roots, because there's a ton of them. First of all, I think I pulled out maybe 30, 40 plants in that one itty bitty little cell, which is crazy. I don't know why they would do that. But I did separate out my healthier, larger plants, and here you can really see that taproot, that similarity to carrots on this bigger one. So these bigger ones I will just plunk down in this hole, and to be truthful, this is not big enough. It's really not. I'm gonna probably have to go out and get a pot and do the similar thing. Actually, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that this is not gonna work. My brain wasn't quite thinking this through. I need something deeper, just like what I did my basil in, to put these in so that their roots can really grow and thrive. So I'm gonna scratch my little cell idea. I might save that for these little itty bitty little parsley plants that once they get their roots going, like these little bitty ones might do a little better in that situation, but these bigger ones are gonna need a much bigger container for their roots to really grow in. But you get the idea, you understand how I did it. I have 40 plants here that I can now put in a planter, or I can put in the water and help them to sprout some roots and become a nice healthy plant. Now I have no doubt that I will lose some of these, but for the most part, I just got 40 parsley plants for $2.99, and you cannot beat that with a stick. So let me show you this and then we'll close out this video. So here we go. This right here is probably, 15 plus plants. I've got another 10 or 15 plants here, another 10 or 15 plants here, and this was some of the baby basil left over. So look at this, all these different plants from this one little cell. So pretty cool, huh? 40 plants from one, or over here with the basil, 15 plants from one. So I really encourage you guys to give it a try. If it looks like way too much work from you, I get it, but if you're trying to save money, this is a great way to do it. Shoot, I could end up selling all these plants at farmer's market if they really come through, or at least selling their leaves at the farmer's market, or preserving them for myself, for my own use throughout the year, drying them or whatever I decide to do. So anyway, if you guys try this, please post your videos or your pictures of you and your baby plants, and let me know how it goes. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.